If you told me the next Mario Kart game would be a giant interconnected world you can roam around freely, and yet the stages are still as unique and creative as ever, basically every Mario character is seemingly playable, plus multiple costumes for many of the characters on top of that, I just wouldn't believe you. And yet somehow I'm looking at it. This isn't even just an open world Mario Kart game, it's a cohesive version of the Mushroom Kingdom, finally fully realized in a way hardware has only had enough power to subtly imply since back in 2001 on the Gamecube. And I can't even imagine how much of a logistical nightmare this game must have been for a few reasons, but they've somehow pulled it off almost flawlessly. Almost. And I'm definitely going to get into the biggest one that everyone seems to be talking about at the moment. I'll get back to the characters and karts soon because there's a lot to say about those as well. The animations in this game genuinely have more personality in a single tire than the entirety of MK8. But for now I want to focus on the world of Mario Kart World. And it really is one hell of a world, which from a design standpoint kind of makes me wince a little, because I do not envy the team who had to figure out how to make all of this work. I mean, how's battle mode even going to fit into all of this? Is that the big donut right there? Or are we doing like balloon battle royale this time? So let's look into some of the specific design details you probably missed that really put into perspective how much work has gone into realizing this idea. The first and most obvious challenge, and the one that I think people are the most concerned about, is the connected world itself. Designing a fun racetrack is one thing, but now we need more racetracks that serve as transitions between racetracks. These areas are definitely quite a big point of contention, and I think that's going to continue throughout the entire life of this game. Driving between stages is certainly a cool concept, but are they just as fun as driving on a tightly designed stage with a specific theme and purpose? Probably not all the time, but they certainly have tried to use these areas to their fullest. For example, how the landscape is used to create interesting compositions. These tracks look cool when you're racing on them, but sometimes you can only completely take in the full beauty of a structure from a distance, which is exactly what they do here with Starview Peak, majestically sitting at the top of this icy hill, and the same with Sky High Sundae when you're on the way back down. This image really makes me think that colorful, crazy area in the distance looks like a lot of fun, and just like that, the anticipation the player will experience is so much higher than anything we've seen in Mario Kart before. Kind of like the anticipation of knowing a delicious burger is on the way, and the inevitable regret of realizing it actually wasn't worth it to begin with. There are some quite open straightaways that seem to rely primarily on traffic as their only hazard, which might work as a nice breather, a unique opportunity to use items differently, or they might just be a bit dull. We'll have to see. We have seen some interesting new mechanics that I think will shake up these sections a lot more than people currently realize, not to mention interactable map elements like breakable walls, water physics, and question mark blocks that you can hit. Speaking of traffic though, I do love these new designs. The NPC cars are a lot more cartoony, and you can even see them being driven by Koopas and Toads now, something the additional polygon count just wouldn't have allowed for on older hardware. This applies to the crowds as well, which are fully 3D this time, although as a trade-off, nowhere seems to be quite as densely populated as Mario Stadium in the previous game. You'll notice they always turn to face the player as well. However, not all in-between areas are built equally. Some of them actually look pretty great in my opinion. For example, on the journey down from Sky High Sundae, we passed through what seems to be an abandoned vanilla lake, followed by a river flowing between these two icy cliffs, then jumping into the choppy waters surrounding Wario's shipyard with its subtle, grossly green lighting. You'll notice how the weather changes a lot between these two zones, which is another huge issue they likely had to face with this connected world. Sky High Sundae and Wario's shipyard have pretty much polar opposite themes, and yet you need to be able to drive directly from one to the other. In the free roam mode, you get to see these areas in different lighting conditions, which is cool, but while it is kind of new and interesting, it's just not as good. Artistically speaking, you're going to struggle to create a strong feeling one way or the other if the level doesn't have a specific weather condition or time of day during standard races. So the game transitions to an appropriate look for each course in a not so subtle way, but is masked to an extent by how closed this space is. It's clearly a very intentional design. Also keep in mind, these things are never as simple as they seem on the surface. With an unchanging light source, there's programming tricks, such as bake maps, that essentially tell the game where light and shadow will always be, no additional processing required. But of course, when the time of day and weather can change, you're looking at a considerable amount of additional work and strain on the hardware. Of course, this is not the first game to have a day-night cycle by any means, and it's far from the most advanced lighting we've ever seen in a game, but hey, it is still an additional challenge. Wario Shipyard just looks incredible, by the way. I'll make a video fully breaking down all the maps when I can get a solid look at all of them, but as a quick overview, the swinging lanterns, the flags, and the foamy waves really help to set the scene of this dangerous, turbulent piece of the ocean. I really think this part where the waves come through the grate in the ground looks really cool as well. That said, in terms of environmental storytelling, it could have been cool to place the stage over here by Airship Fortress, implying we're going through a ship graveyard actually composed of Bowser's airships that were fighting in the sky above. Just a thought. Thanks to the in-between areas, DK Pass isn't just a racetrack that looks a bit icy anymore, it's a huge resort with lodges and a much larger ski slope for the more experienced Shy Guys, which does also lead me into another design issue this open world creates. Normally an NPC like this only needs to follow a short path from A to B, then, once out of the player's sight, teleports back from B to A and loops endlessly. But now we can presumably follow these guys everywhere, so where do they go? Are these the same Shy Guys skiing down the entire hill into the DK Pass stage, or are they two unrelated loops? And how are they getting to the top of this slope to begin with? I can only hope that we actually see them hop onto this ski lift, but it's entirely possible they just spawn in around the corner out of sight. But okay, we have seen racetracks in an open connected world before. Forza, The Crew, Need for Speed Unbound, even in real life, I guess. But that's kind of the problem with these examples, it's realistic areas connecting realistically. Mario Kart is more like a roller coaster with gravity-defying twists and turns to land, sea, and sky. And while I don't think either of these are worse than the other, only one of them makes me soy out enough to make movie-length videos about it. I would not have been surprised if this open world limited level design. You can't just decide the new stage is going to be a snowy mountain or a shopping mall or high up in the clouds. Everything has to be connected, meaning in between sections that are both fun and transition between the themes. Easy navigation from one to the other, making the design look good from angles you wouldn't have previously had to think about, and even trying to piece everything together in a way that gives you evenly spaced icons on a world map. These are all important things to consider at the same time. Naturally, ambition could start to fade a little. And yet somehow, coursers are still as unique as ever with all the verticality and plate design you could hope for. They rarely cheap out with random floating platforms either. In the desert you drive up a rocky mountain, in the city you scale buildings and construction sites with chunks of road suspended by cranes. In the jungle you catch a strong updraft to an ancient structure. Out in the spooky forest you go to an abandoned cinema and then go through the screen into some kind of movie dimension. The creativity really is still fully intact despite the additional challenges. It's also worth noting we probably haven't seen all of the stages yet, including a certain rainbow-colored road in the sky, and if we are going into space, it sure is convenient there's a spaceport with a rocket ship ready to launch right here. Starview Peak is another amazing looking new stage, which we can assume to be Rosalina's home track, based on the similarities to Rosalina's Ice World, the general star and space theming, and the library, which is something she'd love. Plus it's all around beautiful. Just like her. I really am excited to get to doing a video about the characters in this game, they really do look so good. This stage also essentially confirms that anti-gravity is gone, at least in name. Instead we just kind of throw gravity out the window whenever we feel like it because that's cool. The player has more freedom than ever, giving tracks multiple varied paths with rail grinding and wall riding. And more freedom means more bugs, means more of a pain in the ass to make everything work properly. And yet, all of this is here because it looks really, really fun. So all of those things together make Mario Kart World a logistic nightmare to design, but there's one more thing that takes all of those elements and just doubles the workload, if not more. And that's the fact many racetracks are not a racetrack, but multiple different ones depending on context. It seems every track will have a regular loop format for versus races, at least I think. Some of these are a bit strange. But during GP or Knockout Tour races, they double or even triple up as tracks you can approach from different angles. Imagine creating a tightly designed roller coaster-like track with a distinct theme and personality connected to the open world around it, only for your boss to be like, yeah, now make sure this section is just as fun when you drive on it backwards. And jumps need to work both ways. And it needs a new road where the player drives past the regular track. And make sure the layout isn't confusing for the player, so they always know which route is the correct one in each of these different configurations. And keep in mind there's 24 players at a time who can drive up walls and it needs to be bug free. And put the Mario 64 snowman in there because why not at this point? Just as a quick thought experiment, imagine yourself being in charge of adding DLC to this game, which you know Nintendo probably wants to do down the line. What do you do exactly? Every small change you make has a knock-on effect on everything else. Trying to terraform anything on the main island could result in a multitude of issues in the other modes, and the map would become inconsistent depending on if users have the DLC or not. You could throw all the DLC stages into a menu, but that's kind of defeating the purpose. These are the kinds of problems that the developers have allowed to happen for the sake of this new experience. Personally, I think one cool idea would be to use the Peach Beach dock to enter Daisy Cruiser. Then, that entire stage sets sail as you race, and once you're done, you disembark onto Woohoo Island containing Woohoo Island Loop and Woohoo Island Mountain Loop, or whatever it's called. Then, I don't know, Dolphin Shoals off the coast or something. Of course, we'd probably want new stages in the DLC as well, maybe an entire Zelda, Splatoon, or Animal Crossing island or something like that. You can see how there's some really cool opportunities here, and how all of this could become messy quite quickly the more that gets added. Again, the player needs to be able to drive to each of these, which is a huge amount of additional work compared to previous games. But yeah, in conclusion, I think Mario Kart World was probably a huge pain in the ass to make, and I cannot wait to play it. More videos about it and other cool games are on the way. Bye.